a year ago today, I was diagnosed with autism. Just 1 year ago. So I want to talk about some changes that I've noticed in myself and how the year played out. Because the weird thing is, I already knew this for a while. Like, there were stages of it too. When I was in my early adulthood, like 20, I just thought it. I'm like, this just makes sense from everything from high school and how you felt your whole life, and the fact that you were in special ed classes and now you're excelling. And it's just like, yeah, people just read you incorrectly. And, I already processed a lot of stuff, feeling gypped out of a lot of things because I realized how much trouble it was for me to socialize with people. Just, it was a chore almost at first. And like, I got to the point where I was well socialized. I could make friends. Long term relationships, I had them. I just didn't really do a lot of the things that it seemed that I was naturally gifted in. And so it kind of hurts. It does. And I kind of already worked on that, but having the pre realization opposed to the validation makes it a little different. I don't know. It just was more real in my mind. So in a lot of ways it was necessary, and the reason I was getting diagnosed is because I was just carrying this baggage around from a bunch of things I've been through in my life, and a bunch of things that I knew were a problem, but I wasn't really getting through completely with them. um, Things like having bad friends, and I don't mean I'm just like sensitive, like, I mean stealing from me. They did a lot of drugs. They put their needs first, and the problem is that they never fulfilled their needs because, well, that's the nature of the addiction. They anticipate the high, and it never measures up to the actual effect. It's like the excitement coming up to it was just way out overblown. I mean, that happens in a lot of places. You're gonna go eat dinner somewhere, it's hyped up to the point where your expectations are way up here, and it doesn't quite match it. You feel let down, even if it was a good dinner. And so, yeah, these drugs are fucking them up, but they just aren't ever having their needs met. And that's just gonna wear at you in various ways, especially if it's ongoing. And I could just say that there are certain ways I was treated which didn't reflect them understanding that I was also a being, a person with needs. It was just focused in on them, and it was bad. It was bad. Like, it was at the point where if I was doing good for myself, there was a lot of jealousy from their side because they needed to be on top. They needed to feel okay about themselves, and if they didn't because of you, it was okay in their mind to try to sabotage you in any way they could. They just weren't really friends. It was more about them, and I've already known this for a while. It's just seeing how you were somebody with a sort of social disability, and the way you handle it is different than others. Really, I could say I'm stupid here because a lot of normal people would just walk away. People would do something shitty to them, and they wouldn't let them keep doing shitty things to them, trying to look on the bright side of things. I grew up with these people, so um, I'm gonna try to let that slide, and it's just not the way that you should do things. And I just realized that I would think a lot more about others than they would think about me. And again, I already knew this, but it just like really made it apparent that, yeah, you are on the outside of things, and being on the outside of things makes you be more introspective than average. And in a lot of ways, I felt like that started to turn on me. And so, after getting diagnosed, it was just like, I guess, initially, I should start there. The initial reaction was kind of excitement. Like, okay, I can understand things now for sure. I know the answer. And that's a place to work off of, and it was. It was, but things tend to get worse before they get better if you need to work on stuff. And I felt good for the first like 2 3 weeks, but the next bad thing that happened, it made it apparent that oh god, I'm gonna have to deal with this stress and potentially burn out, and then people are gonna potentially be rude to me, and this is something that's happened to me my whole life. Feeling almost as if you have, I mean, people are being prejudiced against you. They really are, without knowing it. They're not looking at a real, like, your phenotype. They're just not seeing that you have an invisible thing going on. They just sense it, and they sense it almost right away, it seems like. And just, I could say this time around I had a stressful year, and I was not as, like, embarrassed and sad about things. I was angry, really mad. I was frustrated because I'm looking at these things that I felt I was getting blamed for my whole life, and I just see them as minor. In a lot of ways, they are. I was really looking at everyone as, if you've ever had dogs, one dog barks, the rest of the dogs are going to bark. They don't know what they're barking about, but a dog barks, another dog's going to bark. And that's what I felt like trends basically are. And these trends seem to run what people perceive as cool and not cool, and what you should and shouldn't be doing, like having a life. And I don't think anyone thinks twice about, like, what does it mean to carry yourself in a certain way? What does it mean to have a presence in the room? It's just like, I don't think a lot of people think what that even means. They know what it is, but why does any of this matter exactly? Why does it matter that my rhythm, my voice needs to match some pattern for you to find me interesting? Because you think that and you say it, but when I say what you're wanting me to do, it kind of sounds stupid, doesn't it? It sounds pretty stupid. It's like, okay, you don't want me to talk monotone, so it helps your brain pay attention when I have inflection in my voice. Because what reason? And we don't really know, it just does, and so we want it that way. And just, I looked at it as, I have this condition which makes that sort of thing hard for me, and I'm always going to have to struggle with it. And when I'm struggling, which makes struggling with that stuff harder, people are going to judge you more, be more against you when you need people to kind of help you, but they're not going to understand it because they're neurotypical most of the time. They don't understand how it is to feel the way I was feeling on so many instances growing up. Most people won't even have sympathy for it. They just don't understand it one way or another, empathetically or sympathetically. And I just feel like I'm always required to placate other people's emotions by attempting to appear neurotypical. And that's oftentimes what it is. You need to not just keep up a charade with your body language and the way you talk, what words you use. People only like a select vocabulary. They don't like you using words outside of, even if they know what the word means, they just don't like it. Like, who says that? Who says stuff like that? It's just, again, we go back to the dogs barking. They haven't heard another dog that they look up to bark the word that you're saying. And so you don't say that. It just, it feels so shallow, all of it, but it matters so much to everyone. But past all that, you have to keep up the charade of lying socially all the time. Don't really say what you think. Say what's polite. Do the calculus in your head and come up with the right answers while we're having a conversation, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. Not exchanging real information, exchanging pleasantries, because for whatever reason, that's where the neurotypical is over. The energy, not the information. And again, it's just so catered to a different sort of way of being and thinking that it was just frustrating me. I was just sick of it, because I'm judged for not being like you all the time. But do you ever judge yourself? Do you ever actually sit back and look at what you're doing? Because I'll say without a problem that I have trouble opening up with my body language, and I do, because if I open up with it, it's not going to be the same as what other people do, and so I have to hide it. And so of course it always looks rigid and weird and robotic, but that comes from a lifetime of always hiding, where I feel that if something, and I mean after a while, starts bugging me, people just like flip out. And I don't know, like, you say you're going to be somewhere at 6, this person's always 30 minutes late. Finally, when you're waiting on them and they want to do 10 more things and you just say, let's go, they get mad at you because you're rushing them. It's like, oh my god. Oh my god, you're going to waste my time over and over, and then finally, when it's just time to go because you're already 30 minutes late, you're going to say, I'm rushing you. It just feels like people have this sort of, and I guess like the person I'm thinking of there, he seems to not like it if you don't talk a certain way. I don't know. It just was just stressing me out. It's just stressing me out. You're supposed to like fit into this box and deal with it. And it doesn't matter if somebody potentially puts you in a dangerous situation. They'll just, whatever makes you autistic, they see that and they see this person's naive and they don't know what they're talking about. The danger that they were saying was just, yeah, I think if you knew what this meant, if you knew what a ghetto was, you wouldn't even have bothered texting me. It's just, I don't know, just, people can be so biased towards you and just so dismissive and just so arrogant, like they know you in a way they don't, and you know it. And it just is a recipe for disaster, more burning out, which I kind of did. It's just making it so apparent and real, and that this is going to be your life kind of made me upset about the whole fact that I'm going to always be autistic and live in a world where most people are neurotypical, because no matter where you go, there's a seemingly sort of baseline programming that goes on that people just generally abide by. And it was rough. It was rough. It just made me really look at society and myself in a way I didn't. But I could say that it was past the sad phase and it was into this anger phase, which was probably good because that sad phase lasted a while, and this is probably, it was the next sort of step. And so I go on just not feeling good for a while, just not wanting to be around a lot of people I liked being around, not having the best time trying to joke around with people, just having trouble focusing, not feeling great about a lot of things, a lot of ways that relationships ended up with, like, had a rough year, to say the least. But the thing I started focusing in on a lot was myself. I decided to take the focus off others and what's good for you. First thing I did was I quit drinking. Actually, in fact, it was Thanksgiving yesterday, and I had my first 16-ounce beer in a while. It's going to be a while, because my voice is off. It's just, I feel tired. Like, yeah, I got bags under my eyes that aren't usually, it's just the drinking really, really kills you. And I didn't even feel more hyped, more sociable. I felt just tired, too, when I was drunk. Just filled up with carbs and a little bit more sloppy. That's about it. So, it's just something that I always kind of use for a crutch. And I think a lot of autistic people do, because if you're around a lot of people, what goes hand in hand with people? The loud noises, stuff like that. It's just overwhelming, and I think it kind of just helps out with anxiety and being able to deal with all the noise. It mitigates a lot of things. It's a can of worms, because I could say I've known certain people that get drunk around me and their filter comes off. And they're getting mad at so many things that I can usually sense. Like, my body language is making them uncomfortable. They're going to tell you that. Like, you need to fix it. Your body language is making me uncomfortable right now. It's just like, okay. Like, just, you're not even looking at me really, but sure. It's just, that can happen. That can happen, but a lot of people, if you hear two drunk people talking, a lot of times they're not having the best conversation. It's kind of all over the place, and they're just drunk, and it's just making it more exciting and fun than it really is. And luckily, that helps out with us being accepted more. So it's just alcohol is very tempting, and I'd probably be drunk a lot more if the hangover wasn't bad. But it is for me. One 16-ounce can, and the next day I'm just not feeling great. But I decided to step away from that because if you need it for a crutch and you don't feel good the next day, then you gotta learn how to wean yourself off of it, which I did. Partially too, I just felt more not not so happy when I was drunk. Just kind of, yeah, it's a depressant. I did feel down. I felt like I had a glazed over sort of look, and I couldn't do as much as I could have done if I didn't drink. It just, I realized that it wasn't great for me, and I'm just saying for me, it wasn't great for me, and I cut it out, and I started working out more, and then I started kind of thinking about the fact that people put you in a box, but they don't know where you go. You have trouble figuring that out because everyone else has a sort of template in a way. Not just that list they have other people to draw off of that tend to be more like them than I am to those people. See, it's just doing research, you see that neurotypical brains are much more similar than two neurodivergent brains, and much more so with neurodivergence and neurotypical, so that just means that there's more people like a neurotypical for them to draw off of and emulate, and it works better because they're more like them. They can read that script better because a lot of times I've experienced this firsthand. They're projecting on you. They're not reading anything. They're doing this sort of cognitive thing where they know how they are, and your brains are more similar. If your brains are more similar, you're going to be more right most of the time. And I just kind of gave myself an excuse for, okay, this has frustrated you when people jump to conclusions and then they're completely wrong and they don't listen to you. Yeah, that's annoying. In fact, I've seen that in them. When they think I'm saying something about them, they don't like me reading into them. They feel like I'm simple and I can't do that. So, it sucks, and it sucks like realizing and accepting people look at you that way. But then again, it gives you a reason to kind of feel the way you are. I don't think anyone feels good being talked to like they're simpler than they are. I don't think anyone does. And I could just say it's happened to me a lot in my life. I would always just be like, don't have such an ego, stuff like that. But I see other people have egos, and it's just like, why can't I? Why do I have to suppress my own and deal with it on my own time when somebody's actively telling me stuff that I know is not true? It's like I should have the ability to say, no, I don't think so, if it comes to me. Or if you say something to me and I ask, well, why do you think that? You should be able to explain instead of just getting mad. It's just like, there's a lot of BS out there. And so instead of just saying, I'm autistic, therefore I'm like this, I've just been like, I'm not neurotypical. Okay, that means I'm not like this necessarily. And in a lot of ways, there's more similarities between us than differences, neurotypicals and neurodivergent people. It's just, it's significant enough for it to be classified as some sort of condition. And it gives me a lot of strengths. A lot of the weaknesses do come from the fact I'm just not like other people, and people want to see a reflection of themselves a lot of the times. So, it's something special in a lot of ways. It can be lonely, but it can also be special. And it's just kind of like, it's hard to really say where a neurodivergent person actually lies, because we are so much more different than neurotypical people. It's just in the brain scans, in the science, we just see that there are these pronounced and significant differences. It's just, a way to kind of appreciate the fact that you have a unique perspective. And it doesn't mean that you have alexithymia and can't read people at all. In fact, there's a lot of autistic people out there who have hyper affective empathy. Just that cognitive empathy is hard because you have a different perspective than these other people. And a lot of the people who look down on me really have no idea how strong I am and how many things I'm juggling when I'm just trying to placate them on various things that they deem important. But when it becomes one of my boundaries, they just don't understand them. They think everyone's boundaries should be their boundaries, and if you're upsetting their boundaries, it's because you are more like a child who needs to learn. It's just not the case. It's really just not the case. Certain things, like asking why somebody means something, it's just, I think if you told a lot of people this, like, people get mad if you try to defend yourself, if they're wrong with something, or ask them why they think something. It's like, they think they're just being challenged and go to this, like, survival mode right away, but really, it's like, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, and most of the time you're just telling me with your lack of ability to tell me where you're coming from, it's based off some sort of tribal feeling. And that's why we get defensive. That's what I usually uncover there, and I've just learned not to ask because people tend to just get mad. But it seems like nothing to me. But you expect me to lie about stuff and not say what things actually are. Expect me to just, just respond with the scripted answer. And you expect me just to be okay with loud noises because you are, and you expect me just to be okay with big crowds because you like them, and then you just expect me to be okay with you treating me like I'm less of a person than you because I don't align as much with you. And it just gets to the point where it's like the things I'm expected to do and the things that people expect me to do are just not quite aligned. And I can just say that I've been better at sticking up for myself, not putting myself in situations where people are gonna act like they're the boss of me when they're not, or that they have control of how I should act and shouldn't act, when really the ways I'm acting are not anything. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna lie that something was good when it wasn't. If I didn't like the play that I watched, I'm gonna tell you I didn't really like it. It's just like, I don't want to give that false sort of positivity and come across as a better person than I am. I'm not after climbing the social hierarchy in the same way. It's just not what I'm after. Doesn't mean I don't like people and company and stuff like that. I just don't like how a lot of people I don't like the scaffolding a lot of times, the rules that people make up. And so it's just, I try to limit being around people who are very rigid in that way, because I can be rigid in my own ways and they don't like it, so I shouldn't have to put up with their own rigidity. They just don't see it. It's just not the same. Having a schedule and like doing things like that, I'm not telling you how to be while I'm in that schedule, but I want to wake up at a certain time, I want to go to bed at a certain time, it's just like, I'm different, and that's okay. And looking at it, it's like the ways I'm different, it caters to a lot of talents and skills that a lot of neurotypical people would want. It's just like, I've thought this multiple times in the last few months. I'm sitting there watching a video on machine learning or physics or something like that, just for fun, like in my free time. I'm like, alright, instead of talking to people, this is what I'm doing. But really, I'm like, I bet a lot of people on some level are jealous that you're sitting here putting the time into learning something like this and understanding it, and it's probably weird to prefer to just digest information to shooting the shit with the boys, Not that I don't like doing that every once in a while, but again, it's just a lot of people do see it as a sort of strength. And yeah, I don't know. I've had a lot of people tell me that people don't treat me well because they're jealous of you. And I know that sounds arrogant, and I don't like saying it, but maybe it is that way for some of the reasons that neurotypicals treat autistic people poorly. Just because, not just that we're weird, but we have gifts in certain ways that they wish they had. And I don't know, I've just been holding on to that more. I don't know if that's petty or what, but I can say that after a whole year of being diagnosed and going through kind of a dark period, and I can get more into detail there, I just kind of want to leave some of this stuff as is. Just basically neurotypicals and their bullshit was getting to me a lot more. I can say that I just opened that can of worms, worked through it, and I definitely feel better now. I feel better now. I feel better, a lot better at putting my boundaries down, realizing how many times people walk past mine, and just going through that whole uncomfortable mess of how much you need to respect others while they don't respect yours. And just, you gotta drop the way that people think about you, not change it, not do anything with those people, and just move on and realize how you need to change how you act towards others. Like, if you put down these boundaries at first, either they're not going to like you or they're going to respect them. And it's better getting into a relationship where you're trying to prolong it longer than it should be, because, well, I've already sunk so much time in here. It's just, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go through some of the boundaries that I've been laying down and just like, I'm not taking stuff. Basically, if somebody does something, I just lay it out. And if they don't want to, if they get mad at me, I just kind of, I spend less time around them. That's just it. It's just that simple. That simple. A lot of my problems could have been solved by that simple thing. Like, so I think that just getting the diagnosis and taking myself and my perspective more seriously in the end could have just helped me get through a lot of stuff that was unnecessarily frustrating. Because that's what a lot of life is for us, just being frustrated, not just anxious, not just feeling lonely, not just all that. A lot of it's frustrating too. And I think the frustration leads us to isolate a lot of the times, because we're not getting what we are putting the work into to get out of relationships. So, again, I just would have saved myself a lot of frustration, not just being myself more, but allowing myself to be that. Allowing myself to get upset at things that make me upset. So, sometimes just taking yourself more seriously is what you need, and the diagnosis ended up helping me with that.